So, after Taylor and Serrano serving up an absolutely amazing thriller slugfest, we move on to the number one star in the sport this week. May the 7th, Cinco de Mayo weekend, we have Canelo Saul Alvarez against Dmitry Bivol. So this is 7th of May, the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. This is traditionally the weekend that Canelo likes to get out. You know, he likes to run out. The Mexican fans go crazy for him. It's an amazing event. It's an amazing spectacle. And this time in the opposite corner, he's moving back up to light heavyweight. After last year successfully winning all 4 belts in the super middleweight division, he now moves on to light heavy. He has been at light heavy before. Let's not forget he went up and tested the waters, as it were, in 2019 and knocked out Sergey Kovalov for the WBO belt, but he quickly vacated that and moved back down and cleaned up the super middleweight division. Now, if you remember as well, Canelo was talking after that already. Reneso was talking about moving all the way up to cruiserweight and fighting Ilunga Makabu. That fight kind of fell out of bed, and he now seems to have settled on light heavy, so we kind of expect to see him clean up the light heavyweight division before moving on. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves, because he's got Dmitry Bivol on his way, and let's see what actually is in his way and what he's going to face come Saturday night. Because Bivol, I think this is an exciting fight, because although we kind of think it's a stamped on Canelo win, as we've become used to. I mean, he won all four belts in the super middleweight division almost at a canter. But I think Bivol is in his prime. He's 31 years old. Ironically, exactly the same age as Canelo, even though the difference in experience is vast. But he is, he's in his prime. He's a quality operator. He's a proper light heavyweight. He's probably ranked second by Ring Magazine, as in the light heavyweight division behind Birbitev. But he is a class operator, and he is someone to be contended with. And he also comes to this fight with a lot of confidence. Let's not forget he's an undefeated fighter, and he's determined to take his opportunity, and he's determined to win this. So where does Bivol come from? Well, Bivol is Russia. He was born. He's got born in Kyrgyzstan in 1990 with a Moldovan father and a Korean mother, and then he moved to Russia when he was 11, took up boxing when he was 6, moved to Russia when he was 11, and as an amateur he was absolutely stellar. So this is an interesting thing to look back on. He's had a real stellar career as an amateur. I think his final record was 268 wins, 14 losses, and he, during that time in 2012 and 2014 he was Russian national amateur champion, and he turned over in 2014 after winning that last national title, and then he kind of raced to his first interim WBA world title, was only his 7th fight in 2016, and so since then he's been contending pretty much world titles, because he's been the interim tech challenger. He was then elevated to super champion, as is the complexities of the WBA world championship title, but effectively he's been a world champion since his 7th fight, and he's now 19-0, so coming into this fight really brimming with confidence. I mean, Canelo, as we know, has tested the waters at light heavy. The photos of him in training, he does look a lot thicker set. He does look like a proper light heavy. He controls his weight very well, Canelo. Interestingly enough, he says he's been on a vegan diet for this fight. This comes 4 years after the controversy with the contaminated meat, when he had that positive sample test, for steroids. But he comes into this saying he's had a vegan diet. He looks great. I mean, he looks really good in training. He looks quite thick set. He looks like a proper light heavy. But of course, he has got that. He's only 5'7". Bivol is 6 foot, and Bivol is a tall, rangy, technical boxer, as you kind of expect with that, with that incredible amateur background. He boxes with a kind of high guard. He uses, punches kind of, doesn't punch a lot. He's kind of, is offensive, is a little bit sparing. He's very deliberate in what he does. Likes to move in and out. He's got a very good jab, and I think this is really his only chance when he's coming up against Canelo. Like I say, he's got a height and reach advantage, and he needs to use that. So it's going to be very interesting to see what the ring is on that night in Vegas. Let's not forget it's Canelo. So, it's a Matchroom promotion. He's signed for 2 fights with Matchroom now. It's going to be this one, and then it looks like he's going to then fight Triple G in the trilogy fight after that. So whether he'll move down in weight and how easy he'll find out to move down back to super middle, I don't think there's any way he can get back to middle. We will have to see. But that, we got to get past this fight to see what happens with that fight. Interestingly enough, I think since the second Triple G fight in 2018, I think this is the most dangerous fight Canelo has been in really since then. And the bookies odds show that, although he's obviously a favourite, he's just a 3-1 favourite against Bivol. So, this is a dangerous mission for Canelo in terms of, how dangerous Canelo's missions get at the moment, with him being so head and shoulders above the competition, it seems, and the number 1 pound for pound. But I think the key to Bivol in this fight, and this is what we've got to look at, because we kind of know how Canelo can win this fight with his unrelenting pressure, with his strength, with his timing. The key for Bivol is the legs and the jab. He needs to move around the ring. He needs to not get cut off by Canelo, not let Canelo cut the ring down. And he used to use that jab, keep spearing that jab out to knock Canelo slightly off balance so he can't move into the pocket and time those shots. He does so brilliantly against other fighters. As Bivol is throwing, Canelo will counter and connect. That's how Canelo wins, and it also chop that body down to get in there. So Bivol needs to use his legs and his jab. So it'll be interesting to see come fight night what size the ring is. Now, like I said before, Canelo does call the shots in this, so I expect the ring to be fairly small. And the interesting thing about when the fight is going to play out is early doors. Bivol needs to use those legs and jab, keep some space behind him. And use his jab against Canelo to not let Canelo move into the pocket and get set, as I say, to time him. And can he do that in the first few rounds? I remember when Billy Joe Saunders used his legs very effectively against Canelo in the first few rounds, and arguably won those first few rounds. But you could see that the effort of doing that for Billy Joe was so high. Whereas he came into that fight and started off in fifth gear, which he obviously couldn't really maintain. And Canelo was only in second gear and then started going through the gears as he ratcheted up the pressure, eventually causing that stoppage or forcing Billy Joe to retire with that terrible eye injury. It's can Bivol use his legs, use his range in the early rounds to get some success and stay out of Canelo's way and maybe nick the first few rounds. And then the real story of the fight will come later in the fight when Canelo starts to ratchet up the pressure. And then, will Bivol be tired after the effort in the start? Like Billy Joe, will he succumb then? Will Canelo be able to move into the pocket and chop the body down? These are the questions. I think these are the two areas, the fight's really going to play out. So, it's going to be very interesting in the first few rounds. I think it's going to be very interesting in the last few rounds. The very fact that I'm saying that means that I don't think it's going to be an early night for Canelo. I think it's going to be a hard fight. I think we've got a super motivated peak Bivol here. And don't forget, like I say, I keep saying undefeated fighter, so he doesn't know how to lose yet. I see this as a kind of long night for Canelo. I could see pressure coming to bear in the 10th and 11th. And if Canelo's strategy is successful, and he's managing to get into the pocket and time Bivol, I could see him forcing a late stoppage. But my pick is for this on points. But this is the other kind of intriguing thing in this fight. Is that if you're Bivol and you're thinking, how do I win this? I've just given you a kind of strategy, which obviously I think his people will be looking at and saying, we use our height and reach, we use our legs, we use our jab. But can Bivol win on points? And I don't mean can he score more, hit Canelo more times than Canelo hits him. I mean, we've known what's happened, previously. I mean, when he got beaten by Floyd Mayweather, that was down as a split decision. One judge went for him. Canelo is the golden goose in boxing. It's the Cinco de Mayo weekend. It's Vegas. It's a matchroom show. Bivol's got to be looking at all this and saying, I don't think they're going to give me a points win. So if I want to win, I kind of need to stop him. How do you stop Canelo Alvarez? Now, that's the big question. Well, he's got to break him up with his jab. He's got to use his legs. Then he's got to move in later, and hope that he can lean on him and use his strength and make it tell. But what I'm saying is he's kind of got to go for it. If the fight is going well for him, after the middle part of the fight, I think, Bivol has then got to ratchet it up on Canelo and try and force that stoppage. I think that's his only route to victory. It's a narrow path, but it is there, and that's the only thing he can do. So, I do expect the fight to be exciting. I do expect it to be an interesting fight. My pick is for Canelo, stoppage 9th or 10th, or Canelo wide points. But Bivol is a live contender. It's great to see Canelo stepping up and taking these challenges, as he always does. But his aim is obviously to look past Bivol, to clear up at light heavyweight and then maybe move on to cruiser. But this is going to be an interesting fight. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. It's two guys in their prime. It's difficult when you look at Canelo's record of 57-1-2, against Bivol's of 19-0. And Bivol, as I said earlier, turned pro in 2014. Canelo turned pro in 2005. But they're both 31, so both really in their peaks, in their prime. So a great fight. Can't wait to see it. Ring walk time in the UK will be about 5 a.m. Obviously Vegas fight. But for those of you who are staying up and watching it on DAZN, I think it's going to be a great fight. For those of us that might get up at 6:30 and try and stay away from the results, I think it's going to be a great fight. But I'm really looking forward to this. Canelo marches on. Let's see what happens.